All right, everybody. Welcome to week number 12. That is right, week number 12 of your Cultural Heritage 9410 class. As always, I am your professor, Dr. Jace K. Austin, and I am sporting a little bit of a disheveled do this tonight. That's what raising kids will do to you. And I have been helping my friend raise her foster child, and it's been quite an rewarding experience, but it also has made me totally unconcerned about whether or not my hair is brushed at any particular moment when I am inside, and that includes when I am recording these videos. So, having said that, we're still going to do our week 12 check-in regardless of how I look, because maybe I shouldn't be that vain or histrionic in the first place. So, having said that, let's get into a few course updates here and a little bit of a discussion. I'm going to try to keep this under 15 minutes because it's actually kind of late and I'm ready for bed, and you probably don't want to listen to me talk for more than 15 minutes anyway. First thing is first, the Four Heritages assignment was due on April the 11th. It is now April the 14th when you will see this, because I will be uploading this to appear in the class on April 14th. I said I upload videos on Monday and Tuesday night whenever possible, and so Tuesday night is when this is being uploaded, but you probably won't see it until Wednesday morning. So the top four heritages paper, if you have not done that, to be honest with you, I have not looked into my grade book to see whether or not everybody has completed this or not, but if you have not done this, then you need to go ahead and get it in. You will at this point be subject to late penalties, but trust me, late penalties are better than not turning the assignment in at all. But I hope that you all have completed this assignment and that you enjoyed it. And if you didn't enjoy it, I at least hope that you learned something and got something out of it. So, yes, Four Heritages assignment, I made it due after spring break, and hopefully you have completed that. And from here on out, you really only have discussion boards, your finals, whether that is the final paper, or if you are doing a project-based final. And then also you do have the mini interview with the cultural heritage worker, which will be due on April 18th. So that'll be this coming Sunday. So if you have not done that yet, then you will need to go ahead and get that done. Let me pause for a second because I'm getting a weird message. Okay, I'm not exactly sure what was going on with that weird message that I got, but hopefully it won't interrupt the recording that I am doing. And I see that a lot of you have completed your Four Heritages. I mean, not your Four Heritages, your mini interview with a cultural heritage worker assignment. If you have not, this is not something that, it's definitely not too late to start on it. And I would advise you to go ahead and reach out to somebody and get them to answer these 5 questions. Post your 5 questions. And what I would like for you all to do, if you haven't already done it, then go ahead and do it next week. I am hoping that you all will look at each other's posts in the mini interview with the cultural heritage worker assignment, because this assignment, the reason why it exists is for vocational guidance. It is to kind of help you all see what opportunities may be out there for you to do in the cultural heritage realm, not just in libraries, but in GLAM, galleries, libraries, archives, and museums, or even in some other aspects of cultural heritage, which may include working with zoos or working with historical societies or whatever the case may be. So there are a lot of options there. Gotta pause one moment. So there are all kinds of, and your library science degree will actually help you with a wide variety of things, but there are all sorts of things that you can do with a library science degree that are kind of outside of the realm of actual libraries. The library science degree, don't get me wrong, is really geared for librarianship, but don't feel that you'll be pigeonholed. It will be harder for you to get into some other types of work, but it won't be impossible. So I want you to hold that knowledge with you. Finally, yes, let's take a look at Confederate commemoration here. And I'm just gonna, basically soapbox on this for a little while. If you have any questions, of course, you can, as always, email me any place, anytime, anytown. AustinJ@Missouri.edu. So, yeah, let's flow down here to our Confederate commemoration here. So, this is like this is one of my favorite images ever. Just seeing, just seeing this young black child just look at this camera as if, just totally bewildered and not sure what to make of the scene and what he's looking at. Trust me, that is how I think any young black child should be now, don't get me wrong, I believe in intellectual freedom and I believe in having various viewpoints, even if those viewpoints are unpopular, so long as you are in good faith, so long as you really believe what you're saying, and you're not just being a troll, and you're not just being a for-profit jock or provocateur or something like that. But when it comes to Confederate commemoration, I definitely think that we were, and when I say we, I grew up in the rural South, and I think that we were sold some false information growing up. That the Confederate commemoration, well, we were told a lot of things. We were told about heritage, not hate, and we were told about that we were made to believe at least that these statues were around for since the end of the Confederacy, and that flag on the State House in South Carolina. I grew up in North Carolina, but that flag in the State House in South Carolina, that it was something that had been there for the sake of preserving Confederate commemoration or whatever, as opposed to it being a emblem of white supremacy, which is what it really was about, why it was put up there in the state of South Carolina. So there was a lot of false information, a lot of historical revision that we are just now, I think that social media, I will talk a lot of shit about social media. I think this social media has been more of a harm than a good for people, because I do think that it has caused us to create information bubbles for ourselves, and everybody is now living in an information micro reality. I really believe that we're lacking a shared reality, and that's something that documentary on Netflix, The Social Dilemma, that you may have seen me put the announcement about. I believe that that's something that documentary tackles very, very well. But not to get too deep onto that sort of a tangent, what I do want to say is that I feel that I do feel that social media, if there's one good thing that's come out of it, is that I do think that it has been a great myth buster for a lot of the Confederate heritage myths that have been pervasive in the South for very, very long. Because we were allowing one group of people to kind of control the narrative. That group of people, I'll just call them out, would be the sons of Confederate veterans. There's also the daughters of Confederate veterans. But I do think that they were controlling the narrative much, much deeper than people realized. And I think that they were flat out lying to people about the commemoration, the statues, the heritage, quote unquote, and everything. Here are some things that I want to say just based on personal anecdotes. For one thing, I wish that, now I got off of Facebook just for my mental health, back in August. I just couldn't do it anymore. People on Facebook were just saying, like, when it came to the election, when it came to the virus, the coronavirus and all these things, I just got enough of it back in August 2020. I was like, people are insane. I can't believe that I'm friends with you all. And I just had to get off of Facebook for my own mental health, because I swear I was about to go nutty on people. I was about to say a bad word. I was about to go nutty on people. And, getting off Facebook has allowed me to stay out of jail and not put my hands on anybody. And that's the way I wanted to stay. But having said that, one thing that I wish that I had access to, and if I reactivated Facebook, I would have access to it, but I don't want to reactivate Facebook. But I was actually at the protests. I was at the University of South Carolina as a PhD student when the when the flag controversy really came to a head, and right before they actually removed the Confederate flag from the State House in Columbia, South Carolina. And so I have pictures of the flag demonstrations and everything, and I wish I could share those pictures of myself at those demonstrations with you all, but I'm not gonna get back on Facebook just so that I can show those pictures. It's just not worth it. But I do want you all to know that I was there, and it was a very powerful thing, and to see that sort of a change within the state of South Carolina at that time, it was just momentous. And unfortunately, it did take the Dylan Roof massacre to kind of spark that. But from that tragedy, at least one good seed was born and everything. And so we're dispelling myths. Around that time, again, I was living in South Carolina, and I saw some people who were scholars and who were historians rebut a lot of this Confederate nonsense. I don't know what else to say, nonsense, including people try to, there's a word game, and I didn't realize this until the Dylan Roof massacre. And you're free to disagree with this, but this is my perspective based on the information that I have consumed, as well as being spending the first 35 years of my life in the South before I moved to Missouri at the age of 35. One thing that I would say is that the common word game that you're going to hear when it comes to the South is people are going to say, like, you will hear the debate as to whether or not the Civil War was fought over slavery. And I didn't realize it until Dylan Roof and the protests that came after Dylan Roof. But actually, this is a game of semantics. That's all it is. When people ask the question, was the Civil War fought over slavery? It is just a big word game. And here's the answer. Was the Civil War fought over slavery? No. But did the Southern states succeed over slavery? Yes. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. And that is something, what happens is that people conflate these two things, and then they get confused, and then you get very idiotic discussions. And I've had very idiotic discussions with white people and with black people on this subject matter, because everybody just wants to be an emotionally charged idiot. So when I say that the Southern states secede based on slavery, for one thing, South Carolina was the first state to secede, and you can Google and find the South Carolina succession document online. And the thing is, you cannot read that document and say that South Carolina seceded from the Union for any reason other than slavery. That's why they seceded. If you read that secession document, you will see the case that South Carolina is making for slavery, and for also trying to not embolden Negroes. That is the message of that secession document. And you don't see it as blatant with some of the other secession documents. There are some that also get a little blatant. I don't remember which of the Gulf states. It was either Alabama or Mississippi, but one of them also, I think it was Mississippi, also has a pretty blatant secession document that is saying pretty much we're leaving for slavery. Some are not quite as blatant, but the takeaway is, yes, the first state basically admitted they were leaving for slavery, and what followed was okay, this is going to probably go to 20 minutes. I'll try to keep it under 25. But what followed was en masse joining with South Carolina of quite a few of the other slave states. No, not all of the slave states left the Union, and that does include Missouri. Missouri was a slave state that did not actually leave the Union and become part of the Confederacy. And there were other states that fall into that category as well. I believe Kentucky being another one of them. You had that going. So the states that went to the Confederacy, yes, they did so because of slavery. That is why they seceded. And reading history will back that up. But was the Civil War fought over slavery? No, it wasn't. Because that gives you, semantically, that gives you the impression that the North wanted to free slaves, and that is really not necessarily the case. That gets more complicated, and it's more complicated than what we have time for. Was the North did the North really want to eradicate slavery? They certainly did not want any new territories to be slave territories. But it just gets there's just a lot to consider when you talk about, well, did the North really want to have these Southern slaves freed? That is a discussion that we just don't have time for right now if we're going to cover other things. But yeah, so you get into that, and we thankfully the North did win, the South did return to the Union, but Jim Crow and all these other things came about during Reconstruction, and the South has a very painful legacy due to that. And there's nothing, even with me being a son of the South and somebody who prefers to live in the South more than anywhere else, that is something that I have to live with as somebody who grew up where I did, doing the things I did and believing in the things that I did. But let's get back to Confederate commemoration. There has just been weird rhetoric around this my entire life. One of the main things that I wish people would realize is that you can actually, and when I was on Facebook, since he's a public figure, I'm actually going to say his name. I was Facebook friends when I was on Facebook with a former state representative in North Carolina, Doug Berger, because I had to talk to Doug Berger a lot back when I was a reporter for the Henderson Daily Dispatch in Henderson, North Carolina. He was my representative, and he is a good guy, I'm going to be careful about what I say because he's not here to defend himself. But again, he was a public figure as a former state representative who's still very active in state activism in North Carolina. And one thing that did really, really bother me when I had a discussion with him about Silent Sam, and you can Google Silent Sam to figure out what I'm talking about there. Again, for the sake of trying to keep this video somewhat concise, I won't say exactly what the Silent Sam controversy is. I think, though, that one of the optional readings talks about that as well. But Berger, who was a University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill alumnus, he opposed, even though he's a liberal, he opposed the attacks on Silent Sam and did not want the statue removed from the campus, and said he was embarrassed that students were launching these efforts against Silent Sam. And the activists were launching these efforts against Silent Sam. And I told him about how I did not think that Confederate commemoration was fitting, because I feel that Confederate commemoration is actually commemorating enemies, domestic enemies to the United States. I feel that Confederate soldiers murdered Union soldiers, murdered American troops. And yes, I do, and so I feel that that the Confederate soldiers were domestic enemies. And because of that, I do feel that, they should not be commemorated. We talk about respect the troops, and we hate Colin Kaepernick because he's disrespecting the troops by somehow kneeling to oppose police brutality is disrespecting the troops. I really don't get that, but that's what they're saying. But, they want to say, oh, you're disrespecting the troops by kneeling, but I never hear that rhetoric when we talk about Confederate commemoration. Why is that not disrespecting American troops? We are using American tax dollars to commemorate people who made war against the United States of America. To me, that is very much disrespectful to American soldiers, to the soldiers of our federal government. And when I mentioned that to him on Facebook, what really, really bothered me, and it shows liberal racism in my opinion, was he did not respond to what I said. I did not mention slavery in this comment that I made in response to him. I just talked about the respect for the troops because that was the angle I was going to take. I wasn't going down the slavery rabbit hole. It had already been done to death. I didn't need to do it. But even though I did not mention slavery one time, and I talked about how I felt that commemorating Confederate soldiers was commemorating enemies of the United States. Um, After I said my piece on that, he responded to me by saying, well, Thomas Jefferson owned slaves, and so did George Washington. So if you have a problem with commemoration of people who own slaves, then please send all your dollars to me. And a bunch of white people liked his comment. And I called him out on it. I said, okay, I did not mention slavery in my comment at all. I talked about the commemoration of domestic enemies of our country. So you did not respond to my words. You responded to my skin color. And that's the type of liberal racist bullshit that I've been dealing with in this field for a long time. And I am tired of it. But librarianship is full of that type of foolishness. Anyway, when I called him out on that, he immediately knew that he had done something racist. And so we tried to change the subject, and I just took myself out of the conversation there. But this is the type of thing that, this is part of the problem, you know? And one of his friends actually, doubted my patriotism, basically, and tried to take it back to slavery, basically saying that I was being disingenuous and that, my real beef was about the slavery and not about my concern for the country. Now, my father served in Vietnam. My brother is in the Air Force right now. So yes, I do care about the troops. And in fact, Black people only make up 13% of the population of this country, but we make up 20% of the armed forces. So we are actually overrepresented in the armed forces. And so in my opinion, that means that we may be more patriotic than other groups, other ethnic groups in this country. But I digress. And what I'm going to say there is, when we talk about these things, we do have to actually listen to each other, listen to what each other are saying, and not just try to make these stupid ass replies for the sake of likes. And that's exactly why I have problems with social media. Another tangent that I'm going to get on, and I've alluded to this earlier in the course, is again, and this has happened more than one time in my life. This has happened actually several times where, you know, I'm opposing Confederate commemoration and a white person is supporting Confederate commemoration. And I don't know why this stupid ass retort gets invoked, except that it is a form of white supremacy. Again, I'm just going to call a spade here. So there have been several times where I've been in person or online on social media where I've been dialoguing with white people who support the Confederate commemoration cause, whatever type of bullshit that is. And, you know, I say something about, okay, you know, I make my case for why Confederate commemoration with United States tax dollars is inappropriate. And you can do whatever you can hang your Confederate flag on your house, what the hell ever. That's personal freedom. But, you know, I make my case as to why Confederate commemoration should not be used with the U.S. tax dollars with, you know, because these are domestic enemies. And then also, yes, this is basically commemoration of white supremacy and Black taxpayers are having to fund it. So I'll make that case. And so many times in my life, I've had white people retort to me saying, well, you don't know anyone who was a slave. And if only they just thought for a second how stupid that argument is, because it doesn't take a lot of common sense. I mean, it doesn't take a lot of sense to realize how dumb that is when you were saying that because I didn't know my enslaved ancestors, I shouldn't be bothered by the commemoration of those who fought to keep them enslaved. But these people did not know these Confederate soldiers that they're trying to commemorate. So it's the same damn thing. Like, what are you saying exactly? Like, you know, you're gonna turn around and tell me that I shouldn't care because I didn't know my enslaved ancestors, but you care. You didn't know your ancestors who fought for the Confederacy, but you certainly care about their legacy because you're getting very passionate and you didn't know them either. So why is it that my ancestors can be disrespected because I didn't know them, but somehow we owe your ancestors who were slave owners and fought against our country, why do we owe them any type of commemoration? Again, to me, that is just blatant white supremacy. I don't know how else to identify that. It's a very stupid argument. And unfortunately, again, we have people who just can't seem to get out of very basic thinking. And, all you have to do, you don't have to go to 10. On a scale of 1 to 10, as far as 1 being as basic as thought can be and 10 being as not basic as thought can be, you don't have to go to 10. You just have to go to 2. And if you go to 2, then you realize that, maybe we shouldn't commemorate the Confederates because, then nobody is disrespected. Like, I mean, granted, if we don't commemorate them, yeah, then that means that, okay, so that means that they don't get the honor of being commemorated with U.S. tax dollars. But I don't think that traitors to the United States should be honored they should not be honored by the expenditure of U.S. tax dollars if they made war against the U.S. I just don't think that works. I don't think there's any logic to that. But I think that if you don't commemorate the Confederates, then I think that it's a net zero, actually. Like, if you don't commemorate the Confederates, then the enslaved people are not, they're not disrespected, but I don't think that not commemorating them disrespects them. I think that if you don't commemorate them, you just allow their legacies to be whatever they are, but you don't put them in the public square to honor them and to put them on display or on exhibit. And so, that's where I am with that. I do think the Confederate stuff can be moved to a museum. You can move the flags and the monuments and all of this other stuff. You can move it to these museums and let it be commemorated. Well, not commemorated, but let it be remembered there, preserved there. Because, yeah, I do think that, unfortunately, it has woven itself some roadway into American history. And so those monuments should be, I guess, preserved somewhere. I'm not in favor of just destroying the monuments, which I also, frankly, wouldn't give a damn if you did, if you did destroy the monuments, but I'm not necessarily in favor of destroying them. There's a big difference. I'm indifferent to destroying them, basically. You can or you cannot. But yeah, I'm willing to put all that stuff in the museums and say, hey, this stuff did exist and it was put in the public square because people were not thinking properly. But now if we think properly, we don't put this stuff in the public square. We put it in a museum, put it in context, and, just let people know that this stuff did exist. But now we've evolved away from that troublesome type of commemoration. So that's where I am with all of that. I tried to keep it under 20 minutes and we're at 30 minutes. So I am going to stop it very, very soon. But the reason why I want to just tell you all the reason why I have this Confederate commemoration module in this Confederacy module is explicitly because this does help inform other things. There's nothing that can get the conversation more passionate than about commemoration and who deserves to be commemorated and who doesn't. I think that nothing gets that more passionate, that topic going more passionately than speaking about the Confederacy. And then that trickles down, as you'll see, into the post. That can trickle back into, okay, so in libraries, who are we naming libraries after? My office is in Millard Nichols Library. Millard Nichols, the Nichols family was very, very instrumental in the segregation and redlining of Kansas City, Missouri. And I work in a building named after one of the people who was instrumental in that redlining, and that is troublesome. There are libraries named after troublesome people. There are library awards named after troublesome people, but then there are a lot of other considerations that kind of get tossed about there too. When we talk about Melville Dewey, Dewey was a complicated man. Dewey's abuses against women should not be tolerated in any way or respected or honored in any way. And that stuff is unforgivable. And because I'm not a woman, I'm not going to get into that because I lack the perspective to really talk about that appropriately. But Dewey was also a known racist and a known anti-Semite. I'm a Noahidus, and I'm also, as you can see, I'm not white. There's something to be said about Dewey, and commemoration of Dewey. And this won't be a popular opinion, I know. In fact, and you can get in the discussion board and talk about how you disagree with me, because I know you all will disagree with me on what I said. But and I'm talking specifically about the racism and the anti-Semitism, not the sexism. I believe that as a man, I don't really have the place to talk about the sexism of Melville Dewey. But if Melville Dewey was not a sexist and was not abusive toward women, then when it comes to his racial legacy, yes, I know this won't be a popular opinion, but quite frankly, his very troubling views on race, I don't think should, and on anti-Semitism and how he viewed the Jewish people. I don't know if that for me is enough to strip him, to rename the Dewey Decimal System, which hasn't been done, and I haven't really heard much of people saying they want to rename the Dewey Decimal System. I'm just saying, if that ever came up, I wouldn't be totally on board with, oh, we've got to rename it because it was named after this troublesome person who had these very bad views about race and sex. I mean, not race and sex, race and anti-Semitism. I'm so sorry, race and anti-Semitism. That's where the buck stops. I can't actually do anything with I can't do anything with the other aspects of like should the award be named after him? Probably. I don't know. I don't know. I've got very mixed feelings about that. People do. I do believe that in the future there are going to be things that I do that people are going to say were wrong in the future, but that are tolerable now. For instance, I'm a big football fan. I know this might sound like a silly example, but I love watching football. I love college football. I love NFL football. When I go back home, I love to go to, watch a high school football game on a Friday night lights and all of that. But it could be that in 100 years, people will say, oh man, how barbaric was it that people were actually allowing their kids to put on helmets and just run into each other full speed and get this brain damage. And to be honest, there's a complicated way to look at that too, because I can say that watching football now is not considered morally problematic, but at the same time, the discussion is already here. The discussion is already going, and I am possibly choosing to be on the wrong side of history by watching football, and I could be judged on that in the future. I will probably never have anything named after me because I ain't that damn important. But if I am, what if somebody says, oh, what if in 100 years somebody says, oh, well, Jason Austin, we named our elementary school back in Warren County, North Carolina after Jason Austin because he was so great. And it turns out this guy liked football and he supported watching kids run into each other and give each other brain damage. What a barbarian. We can't name something after him. Or, I also think that another discussion that we will have going forward is I do think that eventually I'm an omnivore, and I do think that eventually humans, at least in America, will subsist on a vegetarian diet. I do believe that the morality of the vegetarians is going to, and the vegans is going to win out. And when that happens, people might say, yo, this was a man who actually ate the flesh of animals that had feelings and, that sort of thing. And how on earth can we really, and he ate animal flesh from animals that were raised on factory farms. And that's these were imprisoned animals or things like that. We never know how the future dialogue is really going to shape, but still, the discussion about the morality of veganism is not a future discussion. That's happening now, and I might be choosing to be on the wrong side of that. and I could be judged accordingly. So there's a lot. It's very complicated, and I don't know where I actually fall on all these things. Please engage me in the free for all discussion, or you can even engage me in the in this week's prompt if you want. I'm sorry that this video lasted so long. I hope you sped it up. I will give you a message to speed it up. But yeah, let's leave it. Damn, 35 minutes. I'm sorry, y'all. This is Dr. Jace. Peace and grace. I'm out.